You know how kids are. I'm sure my brother brought the camera in when he came in from furlough. So, of course, he took all the pictures that he could. Mm-hmm. And I know this is him. He's the one that came home.
Right, and that is...
Ted. He's the one next to me.
Right, okay.
When we were young, we were the closest, you know.
And when he left for the Army, did he leave at the same time Ken did?
Yes, they both left.
What were your feelings? You were so close all through your growing up years, it seems as though from what you've said. When they left, how did you feel?
Well, I felt, of course, I was lost. I was more worried about Mom and Dad, you know, because they weren't young. My folks, mother was 45 when I was born, so, you know, she wasn't a young lady. But like I say, they adjusted it. For some reason, my folks have always adjusted to everything. Maybe it's because of the way they've had to live, you know, mother being a war bride, a picture bride, and Dad being an orphan. They knew they were going to stay in camp until they had no intention of leaving until some of us could get together again.
Mm-hmm. So you were, of course, lost, but Aki was still there.
He left. As soon as the boys left, he got a job in Omaha, and he relocated there.
So it was just you and then your parents. Then Sho comes back. No, Ted had come back
on
for
a
furlough, and he probably brought the camera. Now, this is a picture of your mother and father, and again, it looks like it's out either in front or back of the
This used to be the recreation hall, because our barrack was right in front of it. So that was the recreation hall. I don't even remember them ever using it, because we always used the mess hall.
I see a lot of flowers there.
Mother always had flowers. I don't know where she ever got any of the seeds, but Mom was a farm girl, and flowers were her thing. She was always, in Japan, she did that tie-dyeing, what do you call it?
Oh, yes.
She wove material. Because when she was in Japan, she was adopted by an auntie who ran a weaving in her home. And Mother said that when the girls would leave, they'd come to their place to do the weaving. And when they would leave, she was just young, she said, she would make a mess of the girls. So the uncle made her one. So she learned a little one. So she learned to weave since she was a little kid. And I'm so sorry that I never tried to get her to teach us, because she did some beautiful tie-dyeing.
Have you saved any of
No.
those? Oh.
I'm so sorry. My daughter had one for a long time, but it finally went away. But she used to tie it, and we used to watch her, Ted and I. She'd tie this and then dip it in the dye. And
That's a real art.
It is, and to think we were so dumb.
Yeah. You know, you had spoken about the fact that your mother had talked to you about school or not learning enough. Was there any reason for the lack of motivation, or from your point of view?
Well, I think it's because when you're in camp and you have, how many thousand kids your same age, all you can think of is going out and doing something, going to a dance. Or I know if I didn't have a date for a dance, one of my brothers would say, I'm going to the dance, you want to come? So away I'd go without even thinking it. Mother used to get after me. One time between Thanksgiving and Christmas, I think I went to a dance every night. And I got so sick. She just laughed. No, it was between Christmas and New Year's. I went every night. New Year's Day, I could hardly get out of bed. And she didn't feel a bit sorry for me. Just serves you right.
Well, it sounds as though, you know, when you say you first went to Seattle, it was hard to make friends. Now we're in camp, and it seems to be a whole different kind of a story for you.
It is, except that out of all the people that I knew in camp, there's only one girl that I've kept in contact. I think if you don't grow up with regardless, my sister-in-law is 75, and she still goes with kindergarten friends, where girls I went to high school with, they have parties, but they never invite me. The Japanese, you know, even though we were in the same class, I'm not considered part of that group.
Because you feel that you didn't grow up with them from... from
yes.
first grade. Yeah.
I don't know if it's every culture or what, but I never even had many Japanese friends until I became a widow.
Is that right? Well, we need to talk about that. As we then leave, as you leave Minidoka to go to Pocatello, this is another little card. It says here, a Citizens Indefinite Leave card. What was this about?
If you were going to go out of camp permanently, this is the card that we got. And we had to carry it with us. So I always had it with me.
Like an identification card?
Yes. Uh-huh. So I left to go to school. I was a sophomore year, so I went in the summer. I guess I went, July, August. And I went out and registered for school right away. And then a friend found me the first job, my sister's friend.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I lived there for maybe 5 or 6 months. And then I just quit and lived with Ida until I found another job. And I worked for a lawyer, Merrill, at his home. And I stayed there all the time.
What was your job there? What were your duties?
I was the schoolgirl, they called it. And I made $3 a week, room and board. I had to do the ironing and the washing and the cooking and the cleaning and whatever. I can't remember any cleaning lady coming in. I know if she was having a party, she would have a cook come. But other than that, I used to have to kind of keep up the house. Being as just two older people, it was just make sure I was dusted and got vacuumed once a week and changed the beds. So it really wasn't, she wasn't that fussy anyway. I just kept the other doors closed.
And you say you did the cooking. Had you cooked? I mean,
No.
You couldn't cook at camp because they had a mess hall and they had a cook. Where did you learn?
Oh, she just would tell me what to cook, or she'd come down and help me. Like I said, I was there for maybe a half a year, and I found out from some of the kids at school, they say, "Who did you say you worked for?" And I said, R.D. Merrill. And he said, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing there?" And I said, "Oh, I'm the house girl." And they said, "That lady's been in a sanitarium because she tried to kill one of the twins. She had twin children, and one of them died, so she went off and tried to kill the other one, a boy, R.D. And she had a boy and a girl, but they were gone. Daughter was in school, and the boy was in the Navy.
I see. By the time you had gotten there.
So they had a room in the basement for me. It had a sink, but I had to go upstairs to take a bath. And I learned a lot. Mostly I learned how to set a table. That's what my mother wanted me to learn, the niceties of growing up. And I joined them at all their meals except when they had parties. If family came, I sat down with the family. So I was very fortunate there is because they did treat me that way. So, and they had nice things, and she showed me how to do the things. And the cook was real nice that came. She came from the church, and she showed me how to make rolls and things.
So it sounds like you were treated fairly well by your employer. How did the other Japanese Americans in Pocatello treat you?
Well, I laugh about it now. My sister-in-law is from Pocatello, and even at that time, although my brother kind of had liked her, but had never, I never went with them anywhere. Ida had Mrs. Hanaki had a brother that was in my same class. So if I wanted to go any place, well, he'd come by and pick me up. Or with a group that we'd go with. My boss was head of the OP, the ration board in Idaho. And he'd say, "How do you kids get all the gas?" And we'd say, "Oh, they pool it." But in Pocatello, everybody had a gas pump in their backyard. All the farmers did. So we'd go roller skating or dancing or bowling. So, I was lucky there because Ida was so good about that. Any student that was going to the college, she would have them come they could stay with her. The only thing we had to kind of keep house when I stayed there, because he'd come home and go like this over the piano. So, boy, that's the first thing we learned.
Yeah, that's the piano. How were you treated by the other schoolmates in Pocatello?
You know, I didn't have too much trouble. I think I had, there was only 3 girls and 3 boys in our class, Japanese, and it was a 350 senior class that I was in. My sister was always so good, she drove, and so a lot of times if us girls wanted to go to the park or something, then she would take us. So I was lucky there that although I didn't chum around with them, I never stayed too much with them. I was more or less a loner. It was kind of hard. It's easier for the boys to pick you up and take you places than it was the girls. You know, I don't know why, but you know, Ida's brother, she had 3 brothers. They weren't married, and one girl that was in town I palled around with, but she was rather quiet, not like me. I'd rather go bowling or dancing or, you know, but we used to hang around together. And then there was a girl, Japanese girl, that lived in the next house where I was working. To this day, I still, if I go to Pocatello, I go see her. In fact, I was there just a month ago, and she'd had bad pneumonia and no visitors, so I had taken her something, and she called me the other night. I was so surprised. But as far as friends from those days, she's about the only one.
Well, Mary, you were talking about Pocatello and the kinds of fun things that you did, and it sounded like you were really hanging out or palling around with Japanese Americans at that time.
Well, not so much palling around, because I don't know, in any place you go to, most of the girls don't like new girls. You know, it's just you go with them if you have to. Like the girls that was in my class, of course, if they had a function that the class would go to, well, we went together. But on the whole, I think you have, like, there was only 2 Japanese girls that lived in town. One mother had a fish market, and the other girl father had a barber shop. And we used to kind of, if I wanted to go someplace with somebody, well, we would go to a movie, or if I didn't have a date, to go someplace. But actually, I don't think, no matter where you go, it's hard for a girl, much harder for a girl to be accepted than it is for a boy. Because even now, my sister, at that time, and then they called us evacuees, but didn't help. So you always felt like a misfit. And I think to this day I kind of had that feeling that I just don't quite fit.
Kind of like an outsider.
Yeah, you know.
At that time, did you have much to do with the Caucasian kids in the school? Because you said you had a class of, what, 350? I mean, it was a very large class.
No, there was 2 girls that lived, I don't know, I'd meet them on the way to school, 2 Hakuchin sisters, and we'd walk to school and walk home together, because I wasn't able to stay at school, and because I had to get home to go to work, so I would walk with them in the morning and come back with them and drop them off where they were going. Because one of the girls worked also in a Chinese restaurant after school, because we were already juniors, seniors, so I would drop her off and then just walk on the rest of the way home. Other than that, except if Ida's brother was in town, then he would pick me up and we'd do something before I had to go home. So.
Okay. You had said that you were a junior at that time. I think you had mentioned this a little earlier in our previous conversation. Your brothers were all in the service. And there seemed to have been, I was wondering, what kind of value system or cultural kind of thing did your parents instill in you so that you all had that feeling of service to the country?
My folks were always that way, you know, maybe because we were growing up in a Caucasian, you know, the ladies in the neighborhood would always, they didn't come back and forth and visit, but they always talked to Mom, you know, when she was out in her garden, or us kids would always go off to play, and the kids would come over to our house. Like I always said, my folks, no matter who was around, if they were there at dinner time, they must have dinner with us. Or if we had a snack, well, we always got a snack. In fact, it's something I think my family's always instilled. The coffee pot was always on, and I think that's what my parents instilled in us. Another thing that I suppose I don't always tell the truth, but I know my mom had always say, we weren't to lie. We weren't to talk back. Talk back was one of the worst. Mm-hmm. And if we went someplace and made a fuss, she never said anything. She just kind of sidled up to us. And did we get the pinch? And boy, you didn't cry either. She'd reach down and give you one, and boy, you'd straighten up or else. Right. I think, I'm glad that she was like that. She never made any fuss. She just walked up to us, and that was it. Mm-hmm. And we behaved.
Right. So you didn't make waves.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's how come we all grew up the way we did. Mm-hmm. You hate to... another thing is, I'm more so than my brothers. I don't mind getting out and doing things. I'm kind of more outspoken, more than they are. Mm-hmm. I think it's because I was the youngest. Like we used to go for rides, and we'd tell Dad we were little kids, and we'd say, "Oh, Dad, turn here, turn there, turn here," and we'd always end up in front of the ice cream store. And he knew it, but he went along.
Indeed,
But that's the way my folks were.
You had mentioned, though, that one day coming home from school, you passed by the WAC office, or the.
It was just an office that was in the basement of. I don't know whether it was a library or the courthouse, and it's what do you call it?
If you could go ahead and describe a little bit about.
Well, I walked by this building every day, going home from school. Of course, my brothers were all in the service. And I wonder what it means. I was a senior at that time. I thought, what am I going to do when I get out of school? And I just kind of walked in, and I said, I was looking at this, and it was already, the war was over, I had looked at it all through the war, and then when I became a senior, I thought, I should go look. So I just went in, and I said, I was just wondering about the sign that you have out there, I kind of think you're kind of short.
So this was the WAC, the Women's Army Corps office. Mm-hmm. And when you had inquired?
Uh-huh. I just wondered, what kind of things do you, that was all, and then I just never thought of it. In fact, I don't even think I told my brothers I went in there to talk to them. I was kind of embarrassed when they said I was too short. When you're short, in fact, one man I should say, at work at Benbridge used to sing me the song about a short person. I can't remember. I used to get so mad at him, I wanted to kick him in the shins. I can't help it.
Yes, that's so true. You had talked about, being a senior at that point, and I was just wondering, in what ways did your experiences in camp and Pocatello change your educational plans?
I always, when I was going to school, I always wanted to be a beautician, I always thought. When I got to Pocatello, and I wasn't ever very good at school. I passed and got through all right, but I'm not motivated to do all that extra work when we were in Pocatello, I didn't have time to really do my studies. I'd get what had to be done and so I could get out of school. And that was my only purpose. When I came back to Seattle, and even though I wanted to go to school, my brothers were supporting the whole family. So they're really, my brother Ken was married already, so he was off. But Sho and Ock had to support the rest of us, Teddy got a job, of course, but me and my mom, and so we all kind of had to work. My sister came and lived with us also, so for a while, so we had kind of a house full.
So the war was over in 1945, but you stayed in Pocatello to graduate.
So that was 45, and then in 46, I graduated in June.
Right.
So I worked at Merrill's until then, and after school, for 1 month, I went and worked in a laundry to make enough money to come home, because I couldn't ask my folks to send me the money. So it was just like being a house girl. I went to work at the laundry, went home at night, and so I did that for 1 month to get enough money to come back to Seattle.
So you knew at that time that once you graduated from high school that you would like to return to be with your parents.
Yes. I had gone with Ida's brother for a long time, but he went off to the service, and I didn't hear much from him. So I figured, oh heck, I would just as soon go home with the rest of the family. So, my sister was still in Pocatello at that time. She hadn't decided to leave yet. So I saved enough, and then I came home.
So when you came back to Seattle in June or July of 1946, what were your career plans at that point? Did you have
Really, I had
anything?
no career plans because I knew that no matter what, my folks couldn't help me go to school. I wanted to go to beauty school, but I knew they couldn't, so I might just as well go to work. So I thought, what would I do? I didn't want to do housework, and it just wasn't my thing. I did it because I had to. Somebody suggested that I go try sewing. So I went 1 month to the glove factory to learn how to run a sewing machine. And one of the other girls that was there, a girl named Miyagashima, she says, hey, I heard about another job, let's go. So, of course, we stayed there a month and went down to Far West. And then I worked there for a few years, until I got my daughter. I'd gotten married in the meantime.
Could you tell us about that?
I had been bowling since I was in Pocatello. When I came back to Seattle, my brother sponsored a mobile bowling league anyway for us, and we got the shirts and we bowled earlier, and then the boys bowled later. My husband bowled in the second league, and I bowled in the first. My friend Kate Tsuji, or Iga, my sister-in-law's sister, was in our team. She was going with Frank Tsuji at that time, and Osi was in the same league. And one night, Osi says to me, he says, we're all going roller skating. Would you like to go with me? And I said, I have to call home first. So I called my brother Ted, and I says, they're all going roller skating in Renton. He said, oh? I said, tell Mom I'm going to be late. And he says, oh, who are you going with? And I said, I'm going with a guy named Osi Hirata. I see him every week, but I didn't ever think about going out with him. And she said, oh, that's okay. You can go with Osi. I know him real well. So that's how I got to go without any problem.
So that's how you met your future
And I met him
husband.
in September, and I knew when I first went out with him that I was going to marry him. And I married him in December.
Of that same year.
He gave me a ring in October.
And what were your parents' reactions at that?
My father didn't like it. He said I wasn't old enough. I was 21 then. But mothers and my brothers all said, oh, now Dad, So, of course, he had to give in. He was outvoted. And my brothers all told Osi, thanks for getting rid of her.
And then you were still continuing to work, you said.
Oh, yeah, I worked
Right.
when we got married in December of 47, and I wanted to get pregnant right away, and I never could. So we had a lot of tests made, and we couldn't. So in 49, we adopted a little girl. She was 9 months old, and she was born in July, so I guess we got her in 50.
Was that a difficult decision for you and your
For
husband
us,
to
it
make?
wasn't. We knew that if we didn't have any children, we would adopt. The only problem we had was Osi's mother was a very staunch Buddhist, very Japanese. She associated with nothing but Japanese. She spoke nothing but Japanese. And we were afraid at that time if we took a Ainoko that she wouldn't really accept it.
And Anako being a mixed
Yes.
child.
Uh-huh. And so we told the lady, and we told the reason. I said, for us, we didn't care what we got. We met Yoshi Kanemori. She had adopted Scott just before we did. And so I went to her and asked her how she did it, and she told us. And so we did the same thing, and then we got Beverly. In fact, Beverly was here waiting to be adopted. She'd had an eye that they called a roaming eye, but it adjusted itself. So they had kept her for 9 months in a foster home. And so we picked her up, and then, of course, my family had a big party for us. And she sat there, that poor kid, and just looked at us. I don't think she ever seen a Japanese before. And she just kind of looked at us. It was really kind of sad. She didn't cry, she didn't smile, but she took to her father, so that was good. But she just sat there and looked at us. So we figured that was the reason.
Was the process a difficult process in terms of the adoption at that time? This is 1949?
No, it wasn't, because we only lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and they, of course, came and checked us out, and they were very different than now. They came a couple times, and then after that we moved to a house with our own bedroom, but we rented. But at that time they allowed us to adopt her. And we had her, I guess it was 6 months before we got the legal papers. But we didn't have any problems. We were fortunate.
Right. Mm-hmm.
But I still worked. I worked, and then I found a job at night. So I stayed home maybe half a year, 8 months, to get her used to us. And then I had, Seattle Quilting had a night shift for sewing, and I'd heard about it. So OC would come home early, or I would take a bus. My niece stayed with us that time for a little while, my mom and dad. And then I went to work, and then in the evening, I didn't drive then. Then OC would pick me up. Beverly and Oce would come to pick me up and take me home. So
it sounds like you worked a lot of the time then. I mean, though it was at night, it seems as though that most of your adult life
I've worked all my life.
Can you tell us about some of your other jobs?
Oh, let's see. I know when Beverly was still young, my sister got a job washing walls in the White Henry Stewart, the Cobb, and the Skinner building. And she said, "Oh, Mary, the money's really good." And at that time, it was like $4.75 an hour, and that was good money. So she said, "It really isn't that bad." So I went down, and I worked there for maybe 3 or 4 years, washing walls. And to this day, I can't believe I actually did it. I mean, we would get on double ladders because we couldn't reach the ceilings on some of them, or do the stairwells. I think of it now, I look down a stairwell, I can't believe I got up there and watched that, But at that time, there was no health thing that they worried about us. And there was 2 crews, my sister and myself, and another girl, 2 other girls that did it. And we used to do the dumbest things, and yet there was no law against it, where now I'm sure they'd never allow it. Especially when you had to carry your own buckets and your own ladders. And kind of embarrassing, but...
So how long did you do that?
About 4 years. And then at that time, we were trying to get a boy. We had to wait 4.5 years for Rodney. And he was being born in Reno. We knew that, and Yoshikane Mori was, if it was to be a girl, she was to get it. If it was a boy, we were going to get it. And of course, we drove the children's home crazy. They said they'd never do that again, because we kept calling, "Is it born yet? Is it a boy? Is it a girl?" And they said they learned a lesson. They'll never do that again. And we were lucky enough to get him.
Right. So when was that?
Rodney's 45, so it was 53, I think. Mm-hmm. And then even though then I was working at Trader Vic's, and when I was working at the wall washing, they were having a opening Trader Vic's to cocktail waitresses, the first that they would ever hire in Seattle. And I happened to go, and I happened to meet a friend that I went to school with, a Chinese girl. And I had already put in a few weeks at Canlis, so just on a in-between type thing. And so I got hired right away. And of course I was young, and I could remember a lot of things, so I did that for about 5 years. And then I went to, I worked about a year at a place called Polynesia as a cocktail waitress. And then my good friend Alice Sakura Water was working at the Space Needle. She was one of the first to be hired. The Space Needle had just opened, so she said, "Mary, you got to come. You got to come." So I went and applied, and they wanted me to quit my job and come right now. And I said, "I can't do that." And they said, "We're opening. We need you." And I said, "No, I can't." So I said, "I'll be there in a week." So I was a week late of being an original, which I feel, I had to live with that all through the time I worked at the Space Needle. I worked there 20 years. I finally got third in line, but boy, it sure took a long year to get there.
You mean so there was some status to be an original?
Mm-hmm. And I never was considered an original, but I was a week late.
Isn't that amazing?
I just laugh now that I think about it. Mm-hmm. In fact, they had a 50th or 40th reunion, but I wasn't invited because I wasn't an original.
Unbelievable. Well, now, during this time, then you were working at nights, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, your husband was working during the day.
Yes.
And you were watching the children, or at least doing that. And then he would come home, and then you would be working at nights. Mm-hmm. Is that correct?
If he was going to be late, we had a neighbor girl that would babysit till he got home. But usually he came home by the time I was ready to leave. So it wasn't really that hard. When I was at the Space Needle, then I got into doing some of the decorating. So I decorated the Space Needle for Christmas for 3 years. Everybody would come to the house and they'd say, "Is it Christmas?" It'd be June or July, and I'd have Christmas trees all over the house. Because I would usually make one time I made them out of ribbon, 5 foot, and 3 small ones, and 3 taller ones I did. But I never made any money with this. I think about it now. I was such a fool. I just charged them for material.
For the material.
Oh. But I did that for 3 years and decided that was too much work. I made eggs also for a company down in Portland, so I would drive them down. She'd call me and order so many eggs and so many, decorations. Like I made dolls, angels about this high for her one year, and one time I made a little boy and a girl, and out of fabric you put it in, glue, and you form the hats and the heads and the faces.
And was this for a commercial store?
Mm-hmm. 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 And so I would do that.
And your eggs, can you describe that process a little bit more? Was it?
Oh, the eggs, I've been doing it for, I don't know how many years. It was just a hobby. You blow out goose eggs or ostrich eggs or whatever and then cut them out. In fact, I've not done many since, but I used to do a lot. I used to do, one year I did Soul Frederick's eggs. That was fun. The only thing is they're kind of hard to deal with. It's not like a private store where you can just, like in Portland, this lady had this fancy store and she'd just say, "Oh, I want this, and, but at Frederick's you have to have more of you go through all the right channels to get there. So I really did it own 1 year because it was too much like work for no money at all. So
you've done so many things, in your life like that. While your children were growing up then, what kinds of activities were they able to get involved in? Because you were so very busy, as was your husband.
My daughter was always in Scouts. My son would never join because he always had to go with his sister every place. And I was Scout leader for several years. I would do it before we went to work, and then on weekends. So if they had camping trips, well, I always had weekends off. I did have enough seniority to get weekends off, so we'd take weekends. My husband would come home early and take the truck and bring all the stuff, and then we'd take it up to wherever we were going, and he'd drop us off and then bring Rodney back. And so they'd spend the night together, and just Bev and I and the girls.
Was the Scout troop through a local Japanese American church?
No, it was through school. So it was very, a mixed crowd. So it was, like I say, it wasn't just the Japanese community. My daughter went to St. Peter's Church, but it was only because her aunt and uncle would pick her up every Sunday and take her. My son was very rebellious. He wouldn't always go. He wanted to stay home with Mom.
Right. So you didn't take them to church?
No,
I mean,
no, because actually it was hard for me to decide. My husband was is very staunch Buddhist, and I had been raised a Christian, so it was hard for me to decide. And I'd gone to the Buddhist church thinking I would go, but then I would sit there and nobody would talk to me. So I figured after a few weeks of that, I don't think I want to come here. So I just quit. So I let the children go where I knew that they would be welcome, and I didn't have to worry about it.
And so at the St. Peter's Church, then they were much more welcome there.
Because their cousin, the Fujiokas, went there, and so they knew them, and so my brother was real active at that time there, so I didn't have to worry about them. Although when it came time for her to get married, she wouldn't get married in an Episcopal church, and I was so disappointed.
Was there a reason for that?
She didn't care for the minister. You know how kids are. So she got married in her husband's Brethren church out in the North End. So.
What other Japanese American kinds of organizations did the children belong to?
They didn't. They just did it. Rodney was in a lot of sports, football, golf, and all that. And Beverly, she worked all her life too. I mean, she's worked. When she was going to school, she knew that Mom and Dad just couldn't give her everything that everybody else had, no matter what. She worked since she was in high school. She worked at Klein-Gallen Nursing Home in her high school years, and then she worked for Dr. Braille up in Rainier Beach all through college. She went on got a scholarship from Westin Hotels because I worked there, so she went to school from there. And Rodney didn't want to go to college. He went to community college. Then he went to work for Boeing's, and they've sent him to whatever schools he's gone to. So I've been lucky there.
I was wondering, as they were growing up, Beverly and Rodney, did you ever have any concern for them as far as what they might face regarding any prejudice or discrimination? Were you worried
I did.
about that?
I worried about it a lot because, like I say, even to this day, I don't feel comfortable sometimes because although I'm Japanese, I don't feel that I'm, I wanted my children to be with the Japanese community. In fact, we lived right behind the Providence Hospital, and I went by the school one day, and there was no Orientals, no anything but black. And it's not that I'm prejudiced, but I didn't want my kids to go where they would have not meet any Japanese. I didn't see a Japanese on the playground. So I told Dad that we have to do something, and we had bought this house and only had it 3 years. So we looked around and found a little house in Othello Street, and so they would be going to Brighton. And I wanted them to know the Japanese community, although it really didn't help. My daughter ended up marrying a Caucasian, and then the house was too small, so we bought a house in Rainier Beach. And it was really hard for my husband because he had to travel. He did only Queen Anne, Magnolia, and Capitol Hill as a gardener, and that gave him an extra drive every day, I'm sure a half hour at least. So although my yakking didn't really help him, and it didn't do anything for the children either, I really feel bad about that. I wish, to this day, she's 49, I tell her, I wish you'd get into some of the sansei things, and she says, Mom, I don't have time, which is true, She went to school, and she was a teacher, then a principal, and she's in the superintendent's office now, and I feel bad that she doesn't, and I'm kind of glad that she doesn't have children either. She decided that they wouldn't have children, so I hope that she never misses not having Japanese friends and have to wait as long as I did to have some good Japanese friends, you know. Because my husband was kind of quiet, in fact, very quiet, very well read. He read all the time. Like my brother said, I never knew anybody would read a Bible, but he would. He'd sit down, he'd read the whole Bible, never thought anything of it. He was a Buddhist, but he was real quiet. And although when I took him out, I'd always lose him because there'd be somebody over there talking, because he could talk on any subject. He's one of those kind. He could just anything. And so if we went to a party, it was all Hakuchins, because at the Space Needle, that's where all Hakuchins. I'd lose him. Here he would be over talking with somebody, you know, about something. That's why I hope my children will get so that, but I think it's kind of a lost cause now.
So for much of your married life, was your social life not with the Japanese American community?
Mm-hmm. It was mostly with who I worked with. You know, I worked at the Space Needle for 20 years. And in the meantime, I was working for Gretchen's, of course, in the catering on my days off. I also worked at Benbridge. I'd work at Benbridge from 9 to 3, and then Space Needle from 4 or 5 till whenever I could get off early. And then I worked catering for Gretchen when she needed me. So I always had worked. In that time, my husband had gotten a heart attack and had to have open heart surgery. And so, you know, I didn't want him to work a lot, but I didn't want to change our lifestyle either. And I figured, well, as long as I could do it, I'd do it. So that's what we did.
So you worked the 2 jobs.
Oh, yeah, long time. Yeah. But I never minded. You know, just that's the way it is.
And so when did your husband pass away?
In 87.
In 87.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And he was on the kidney machine for 4 years before he died. And I always thought that's how he died with. And then I asked the doctor when he said, no, Mary, his heart just couldn't take it anymore. So.
You had said probably a couple minutes ago in terms of you hope that your children don't have to wait as long as you did in order to get back into the Japanese American community. What kinds of organizations do you currently belong to?
Well, of course, my brothers insisted. My brothers are more like Ken is into the Japanese community, and he said, you know, there's a group of widows called Tomonokai. He says, why don't you go, you know, what have you been doing at night? And I said, well, nothing really, you know, I just go to work and come home, and, you know. I had a little Chinese supervisor. She didn't live too far from me, and Christmas, the kids were all going out. The first Christmas, I was alone, and her boyfriend came down and spent the evening with me. I was so surprised. And Ken says, you can't be doing that. You know, what are you eating? And I don't know. I had some toast and some peas, or I had a salad or anything. He says, you got to get out. So I had a friend, Margaret Yamaguchi, that was in Tomonokai, and she said, why don't you come? So I called her, and I said, I think I'm ready. So I went, and you know, they were always so busy, and we didn't do as much then as we do now. We worked for Cherry Blossom and those kind of things. But that's how I met Steve.
I see.
So.
What other kinds of organizations are you involved in?
Oh, let's see. Right now I'm speaking to schools, but I only speak 2 or 3 times a year, or maybe it depends on when they want me. I go out to grade schools mostly. I've done summer high school at Federal Way, and I've done some, what do you call, alternative schools? Mm-hmm. And then, but usually it's the grade schools I enjoy most. It's they're curious, but they don't ask me all the real hard questions that I can't understand, that I don't know the answers to. I feel that all of us have to make sure that nobody has to go through what we went through. Although for me it wasn't a sad time, it was a time of life. But I think all of us should remember that. I try to tell the children too that you can't like everybody, that's not normal. But you can't hate everybody either. So just because they're a little bit different, you can't say, I hate you, because it can get you in very hard decisions to make that, you have to, everybody isn't going to like you, so, and that's the only reason I try to go out to schools and speak, is because I think they have to remember that we can't go through this again.
And when you talk about this, you mean the camp experience,
yes.
the evacuation?
Although for me, I had a good time, not a good time, but it wasn't a sad time. Yeah, it was an experience, but I don't want other children to have anybody else to go through.
What kinds of things do they seem to be interested in hearing from you?
Mostly for little kids, it's they want to know what we eat, what we ate, where we played, what we did in school. Did we ever get to go out of the camp? When I did the 8th grade, the first thing the girls said, well, did you have a boyfriend? I thought, oh, goodness. Sounds like an 8th grader, right? I laughed. But the little kids are really interested in it. And I think I did the Jewish Academy. Now this is about the 4th year, I guess. And I guess they really are into teaching their children the different things of the Japanese internment. In fact, their map is the one I use now, and I've given it to other people to use because it's such a good. And it tells what state it is in. So,
You mean where the different camps were located?
So I think in all of our Japanese community, that's one of the most important things that we should do. To try to teach people to be more passionate to each other.
That must be rewarding for you to go to.
Well, it's kind of nice. I get teased a lot, especially my brothers, because they say, you're such a blabbermouth.
But I think it's so important, too, that you are willing to share your experiences. You had mentioned earlier that you had met Steve at Tomonokai. You also had mentioned that you're living with your partner, Steve. Things are very different now than they were, 30 years ago. Nowadays, it seems as though that people have so many more choices. How difficult was it to make the decision to live together rather than marry?
At first, I was really more afraid of my family. I didn't know when we decided that we were going to try this what we should do, and it was just for the companionship. I talked to Ken has been kind of the spokesman for our family all along since we were. Ak is very, very quiet. Sho wasn't here. Ted is kind of quiet, and so I went to him and I said, I'm thinking of moving there. He said, well, I kept thinking I see your car over there all the time because my brother-in-law only lived a half block from here. And he said every time he go by, he thought he saw my car. So I said, well, what do you think? And he says, Mary, they're going to talk about you no matter what you do. You're a widow. You're up for... So he said, do what makes you happy.
So you had the support
of
your family.
And what makes it even nicer is I have the support from his family. They've never... In fact, we've traveled with his oldest brother, who was always the big boss in their family, on trips, and it's really, really nice because they have supported me in all this.
So it was the right decision.
Yeah, for us it was. I don't know whether it would be for everybody. We talked about getting married, but Steve said it's just a piece of paper. So, and I've been here 9 years now. So,
what were the reactions from your friends?
Nobody ever really seemed to think too much. They just think, "Oh, your friend," That's why it was. I was lucky there.
Right. Yeah.
So, and all the family's been very supportive. So. My sister was gone, and that's the only thing I feel bad about because she'd already passed away, and we were so close. It was like I talked to her every day, and nobody to talk to. It's kind of hard to be alone and not have anybody. And your kids are all. My kids were busy. Bev was in school. Rodney's working. She had classes, and so.
So it is nice to have a companion.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Very
We
much
do a
so.
lot together.
More than 50 years have gone by since the end of the war.
Uh-huh.
As you think back on your internment experiences, what were some of the best times you can remember from that experience?
You know, I can't even remember any best time. I think coming home was a nice time. Getting on the train, and my sister had packed a lunch, and thinking I'm going to go home. You know, I think in all of that was I was going home to Mom and Dad. And although we were staying at a place called Vancouver Hotel on 7th and 7th and Stewart. And I think there was only 2 rooms and a little kitchen. And yet I was so happy to come home to it. And it had cockroaches I'd never seen before. You know.
But actually, you had been living away for probably three years or so on your own. So that was coming home.
It was. I think that was the main thing is come home. You know.
What were some of the worst long-term effects of internment on you?
On me, I think it's I've always been insecure. I mean, you wouldn't think so by the way I am, but I always get this feeling that, you know, do I fit in, or I don't want to say the wrong thing, or, you know. To this day, I have that feeling. Sometimes I won't say anything because I'm afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing. And Mother always taught us, you know, to be careful what we said, you know. So to this day, a lot of times I won't say anything, even though I to myself, I think I should say it, but I don't.
In what ways do you think internment changed you?
Well, I saw a lot more of the country. I met a lot of different people. I don't think I would be afraid to do anything anymore. I mean, I would do it. I might not like it, whatever came up in my life or anything, but I think it made a lot of us stand up on our own that we wouldn't have done before, you know. I'm all in. That's why I think that we're more well-rounded, and I feel I am too. Although I have this insecurity, once in a while I'll get out and do something I probably would have never done before.
When you think back, you were, 17 when you actually left, I think, your mother and father to really essentially live out on your own. And that's a pretty gutsy thing to do.
Yeah, it is. I guess it is. At that time it was, you know. And but in our family, after the war, my brothers all stayed home until they got married, like in their 30s. And you know, nowadays the kids can't hardly wait to get out. And we all of us, after we once got back together again, never left until we each got married one at a time. Until Mother and Dad didn't have anybody else and had to go live in an apartment.
Yes, that's right. Talk about getting together. Here's another picture. When was this taken? It looks like...
It must have been taken in 46 after I came home, because my sister was still here. She went to Hawaii after the war. Her husband had come to the States to go to school in the 30s. And then their father couldn't afford him to come home, so he came and lived with us. So after she had her children, then she went home. Went back to Hawaii, and she only stayed a year because her daughter would have turned 12, and they would have had to pay an adult fare for her to come home. So she didn't know I was getting married then, but she shipped the children home to my mother and father. And so they stayed with us because they knew they couldn't stay in Hawaii. So the kids came home and lived with us for just about a year until my sister came. And that time I had gotten engaged, ready to get married.
So this is your entire family then? Yeah.
That's what I mean is our family was, that's it. And now, my goodness, we're related to half the people in Seattle. It feels like.
Right. Was there anything about the internment experience that affected the way you raised your own children?
I want them to, although they don't ask me many questions, I know they've read the books that we've had, but I've often wondered, even Bev says the other day, she said, Mom, one of my friends wants you to come and speak to their school in the Lake Washington district. And I said, well, okay, let me know. And but she herself hasn't asked too many questions. I don't know whether her and her dad have talked about it, but I'm sure they have. They were very, very close. Rodney is kind of like a boy, it's okay, whatever. But Beverly would be the one that'd be most interested, but she hasn't really talked to me much about it. I'm really kind of surprised because she knows I go out to schools, but whether she knows what her dad said or not, I don't know. I've never asked her. I should ask her.
And maybe she's not ready.
Yeah.
Yet. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she's married to a Hagujin, so. And they're both so busy that.
Right.
I think that's the trouble with most of the children nowadays. We're all too busy. They're all off on their own doing their thing.
Mm-hmm. That's true. At the time that the concept of redress arose, many were not in favor of bringing up the old wounds and the painful memories. What were your feelings about it at that time?
I really didn't think too much about it. I thought it would be nice, but it's something we lived through. And I wasn't really, I got more, I thought more about it after, because of the injustice at the time. Now it's been how many years since they've been doing this redress thing? It's been a number of years, isn't it?
1981 is, I think, when they kind of started.
And I think up until that time, most of us didn't always said, oh yeah, we were evacuated, and that was the end of it. You never told anybody too much. And I think that's the way I was too, until then you start to thinking, and of course we have bought quite a few books, so we had read, but then among ourselves, we never talked about it. I don't even remember my husband talking too much about, he was in the same camp I was, but in a different block, So I think it's something, maybe it's a good thing it did come up. It made more of us realize that more people should hear about it than...
Right. So you're saying that your views about internment have changed over the years?
Because when I was younger, I just thought it was just part of my life. What's that old saying? Skataganai? Gaman se ikinasai? So.
One last question. What would you like your children and grandchildren to know and remember about internment?
I just want them to know that although, we lived through it, it's something that we have to make sure it's never done again. It's so easy, and the more I read about it, the more I know that this was already planned way before the war. How could they have rounded up all these men the day of the war if they didn't know about it before? It's kind of mind-boggling now that we've gotten older to think that they've done these things, and we were not, it wasn't supposed to be, but darn well it had to be. I'm reading a book now by Norio Norio, I can't think of his last name. And there's parts of that, it's short stories all the way through. Very hard book to read because of the printing, but it's very interesting, and the things that you learn through that book is how could they have remembered, how could they have known all these men were the head of the district? And so we have to keep sure that we're all on our toes, at least trying to find out what the government is thinking, because it's a terrible thing to happen. Of course, I don't think they'll ever do it again. They couldn't, I think. But that's what we thought too.
Absolutely. Well, I'm Beth Kawahara, and on behalf of Alice Ito and the Densho Project, I'd like to thank you, Mary, for sharing your story. We really appreciate your candor and your honesty. Thank you again.
You're welcome. I hope I helped.
Oh, gosh, yes.